professionals and community members that are with us tonight. We'll start with the roll call. Mr. Feinstein, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Kennedy is absent this evening. Commissioner Paul.
Here.
Commissioner Greavy.
Present.
Commissioner Werblin.
Here.
Commissioner Cruzen.
Present.
Vice Chairperson Evans.
Present.
And Chairperson Matthews.
Present. Vice Chair Evans, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now just a note about persons wishing to make comments. There is an option to speak on items that are not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. It's important to remember that no action may be taken on off-agendized item except as authorized by law. Off-agendized item from the public will be taken under consideration without discussion by the Commission and may be referred to staff. Comments will be accepted either in person or via Zoom. To speak on an agenda item, please complete a speaker's card such as this, and we may be running low, so if not, let us know. Oh, you got some? Okay. And bring to the front desk before the public comment on that item. When joining via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9 on your phone to request to speak. You will be called on by name and have 3 minutes to speak. Next, we have approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
Do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
I move to accept the agenda.
I do second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as submitted. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? The motion passes. Next is the approval of the minutes for the September 13, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes?
Staff has no changes.
Hearing none from the commission, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I approve the minutes.
And a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I abstain. I wasn't here.
Correct. The motion passes. Now we have the time for public to speak on items which are not on the agenda tonight, but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. I open this portion of the public comment period. Do we have any speakers for items not on the agenda? Seeing none, do we have anyone on Zoom interested in speaking not on the agenda?
There are people online, but nobody has raised their hand. We have 2 people online. Do either of you wish to speak at this time on items not on the agenda? If so, raise your hand online. Okay, looks like we do not.
I now close this portion of the public comment period. The next item on the agenda is scheduled matters. For each agendized item, there will be a presentation by city staff. For items that involve applicants' requests, I will ask the applicant to address the commission if they so desire. Then I will open the comment period via Zoom and in-house. I will close the comment period after all comments have been provided and after all of our questions regarding the testimony during the comment period have been answered. After the comment period is closed, the commission will deliberate on the item and may have additional questions for staff. We cannot take any additional testimony or questions from the public after the comment period is closed. Our first item is item A, a public hearing on the request of Adam Goodrich on behalf of the Wiseman Company to develop a mixed-use project consisting of 72 apartment complex and a 130 square foot coffee shop on a vacant 2.75 acre site at 500 Wiseman Way. Our presenter will be are Tendai Matunga and Meili Sheehan. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners, everybody in the room with us tonight. I am Meili Sheehan, and I'm going to present a portion of this item and turn it over to our project planner, Tendai, in just a few slides. So before getting into the project details, I wanted to highlight Senate Bill 330 as it applies greatly to this project. The Housing Accountability Act was passed in 1982, and this act essentially was put in place in recognition of the lack of housing as a critical statewide problem throughout California. The bill aims to effectively curb the capability of local governments to deny, reduce the density for, or render infeasible housing development projects and emergency shelters. So essentially, the goal is to limit the ability of local government to restrict housing development. In 2019, Governor Newsom signed Senate Bill 330, or the Housing Crisis Act, which essentially amplified and amended certain sections of the Housing Accountability Act. The primary goal of this was essentially the Housing Accountability Act wasn't quite meeting what the state's intentions were, and the governor wanted to add additional regulations and provisions to, again, support housing development. SB 330 notes that the Housing Accountability Act was not achieving its goals, and it declared a statewide housing emergency to enact more pro-housing policies effective through January 1st of 2025. Due to the pandemic, that bill was then extended to 2030, with the primary goal of creating 3.5 million new housing units. So what does SB 330 say? The first thing to consider is, when is a project eligible for 330 provisions? The bill notes that a housing development project is subject to the state regulations, and it defines a housing development project as any of the following: residential development consisting of 2 or more dwelling units, a mixed-use development where at least 2/3 of the project square footage is designated for housing, or a transitional housing or supportive housing development project. The project we are analyzing tonight falls under item 2. The Senate bill has several provisions on a range of topics, from streamlining a development process to housing occupancy protections. But for tonight, I'm just going to focus on the regulations of the bill that are applicable to the Aurora at Green Valley project. The bill's like 30-something pages long if anyone wants to go home and do a little extra homework on those other provisions. But like I said, for tonight, I just wanted to hone in on the main ones as it applies to this project. So the first item here is a pre-application submittal. The bill allows for the applicant to submit a pre-app of their project to lock in the development regulations that are in effect at the time that they made their submittal. So essentially, it doesn't allow the city or whichever regulatory body to add new development regulations after a project has been submitted. So if they add new regulations, it just can't apply to that project, because the project has locked in anything that was existing at the time they made the pre-application submittal. Additionally, the bill states if the project meets the applicable objective zoning and development standards that are in effect at that time, the city is limited in its ability to deny the project or reduce the density proposed. And an objective standard is a measurable regulation that involves no personal or subjective judgment. So for example, a height regulation. If you cannot exceed 50 feet, there's really no subjective decisions that need to be made to discern if the project meets it or not. If it's 51 feet, no, you don't meet it. If it's 37 feet, yes, you do meet it. So that would be an objective standard. Additionally, the bill also prevents the city from imposing or enforcing subjective standards that would make the project infeasible. So an subjective standard would be something like paint color. I love the color green, but Lori loves the color blue. You know, we gotta fight it out and pick. It's subjective. Paint color usually shouldn't eliminate the idea of the project being developed. However, there are some subjective standards that would limit the project's feasibility. So if you wanted to add, let's say, big, expensive, beautiful amenities, the price of that might render the project infeasible, or maybe the square footage of that amenity would reduce the amount of units that they could propose or the density that they could propose. So this bill limits the city's ability to apply those subjective standards. And then the last bullet here, I'm kind of already touching on it, but we are also limited in reducing the amount of density, the number of units that a project is proposing. Acting outside of the limitations of this bill would subject the city to an amount of litigation risk. So you have a project that falls under SB 330, but let's say our planning commission or decision body does want to make findings of denial. There are provisions in the bill that allow a body to deny a SB 330 project. This is a lot of text on the screen because it's pulled straight from the bill. So I tried to reduce it to highlight it a little bit. So just reading through it with the group. The project would have, to deny the project, you must find that it has a specific adverse impact upon public health or safety. And it defines a specific adverse impact as something that is significant, quantifiable, direct, and an unavoidable impact. And that is based on objective, identified, written public health safety standards, policies, or conditions. Additionally, you would have to find that that specific adverse impact cannot be feasibly avoided or mitigated. So, very stepping back, high-level summary, if the project meets the definition of a housing development project and it meets the general plan and zoning objective standards, then it cannot be denied, have the density reduced, or conditions that would make it infeasible unless significant quantifiable safety regulations are not met. So stepping away from SB 330 and looking at the project today, I did want to highlight the general plan and zoning. The general plan for the site is CHR, or Highway Regional Commercial, and the zoning designation is CONC, or Commercial Office Cordelia Overlay. So the project is consistent with both the general plan and the zoning. Through the zoning ordinance, it does allow for residential development in a commercial zone with a use permit. So Tendai, my colleague here, will be going into those details, but I did just want to identify that the project is consistent with both the general plan and zoning designations of the city. And then just highlighting a little more that use permit aspect to residential development on a commercial site. Here I've highlighted the project site, and again, Tendai will give you much greater details on it. What I want to show you here, the project site is the star on the map. What we have circled in red is the Green Valley Office Park. This is a development off of Business Center Drive in the Green Valley, Cordelia area. So this office park works as a single project. There was a master plan for it to work as a single project. All the internal road networks that you see are private roads, so they effectively work as drive aisles, if you will, to get to the various parking lots that you can see on the screen. The complex has CC&Rs that require all of the properties to allow for cross-access and cross-parking. So effectively, it all works as one development, one project. So in a big sense, The proposed residential component of the project is mixed use into this larger office park development. And then more specifically, when you look at just the project proposed, there are 72 residential units and then a 130 square foot commercial space for a coffee shop. So singularly, just on the project site, there's a mixed use component there. And at that greater scale, there's a mixed use component for the entire office park. And with that, I'll turn over to Tendai to give you all the project details.
Thank you, Meili. The project has already been introduced to you, and I think Meili did a good job in highlighting all the important issues that would help our Planning Commission to make a decision. As Meili said, the project can be accessed through Green Valley Road, which exits from Highway 80 and feeds into Business Center Drive, and then from Business Center Drive, the Wiseman connects and feeds out of Wiseman, out of the Business Center Drive. As stated earlier, this is a proposal for a mixed-use infill project consisting of a 130 square foot coffee shop and a 72-unit apartment complex. There are 3 residential buildings being proposed, averaging 37 feet in height. Our municipal code requires a maximum of 50 feet in height, so they are way below the required height. There is also a provision for a 3,000 square foot clubhouse, which includes, again, a 130 square foot coffee shop, which is the major tenant or major commercial component of this project. The coffee shop would have a pickup service window, and it has no access to the main building. There are 2 sitting areas provided for the coffee shop within the frontage of the coffee shop. Overall, the 3 buildings are required to provide 72 parking spaces per municipal code, 1 parking space for each residential unit. 1 space is specifically reserved for the commercial component of the development. In all, the whole development is giving us 101 parking spaces, which is way beyond the required amount of parking spaces by the code. This is the overall site plan of the project site. Again, we are trying to emphasize on the commercial component of the development, which makes this project, feasible as far as the municipal code is concerned. The developer is also proposing or providing us with a wide variety of large trees as landscaping. And there is several areas provided for the bioretention, which helps us manage the runoff emanating from all the paved surfaces that are created by the development. And there will be a lot of shrubs and ground cover to enhance the appearance of the site. Again, we are emphasizing on the requirement for open space, which is required by code, as shown on the lower section of the municipal code. However, our municipal code gives leeway to our planning commission to make a decision. The applicant is requesting a reduction of open space area from the required 150 square feet to 136.11 square feet. And it's up to the discretion of the Planning Commission to make that decision to grant the applicant that request. This is the first floor plan for the entire area, entire development rather. They're all uniform. The first floor plan area is also uniform to all the buildings that are the 3 buildings being provided. This shows the configuration of the 3 types of development that are being proposed. This project is coming in with studio apartments, which will provide 1 bathroom, and a 1-bedroom apartment, which will provide 1 bathroom as well, and a 2-bedroom apartment, which will provide 2 bathrooms. The development is meets all the design guidelines of our municipal code, and we worked very well with the project architect and the developers to make sure that they will give us a project that would entice and enhance the whole development area. And as you can see, it's well articulated with the variety of paint colors. As a matter of fact, if Planning Commission is not happy with any paint colors, the applicant will be glad to accommodate you wherever it's necessary. This is the right elevation of the building and the left elevation of the building. They are just provided to you for information purposes only. As I mentioned, there's a clubhouse and a coffee floor plan included on this development. And this area shows the sitting area for the coffee shop, which provide 2 sitting areas which are separate from each other. This slide shows a good appearance of how when patrons for the coffee shop approach the safes window, and their seating is also provided right there where the images of people are shown. Again, I will emphasize the importance of common open space. The applicant is requesting 136.11 square feet per unit as a reduction. The code requires 150 square feet per unit. There's also a special condition which requires the area on the east side of the sidewalk curb to be painted red, and provide a no parking area to allow emergency vehicles access when needed. There is also a requirement for construction of a 6-foot wood fence along the property line shared by the Neo Damandi Elementary School. The final design of this fence would have to be approved by the Fairfield Sossoon School District, so as the city staff. In order for this use permit component of the development to be approved, staff has already verified that the project is compatible with the existing feature and future land uses in the area. It's consistent with the general plan and zoning, and it provides adequate roads and utilities needed for the development. It does not create imbalance or overabundance of apartment complexes or apartment units in the area. The project will not be detrimental to health, safety, and general welfare of the public. And above all, the project has no environmental impacts. I'll emphasize on the key conditions that are required for this project. The project will be required to constantly operate the coffee shop at all times. If the coffee shop closes, the property owner must lease the space within 6 months of its closure. If the commercial space is made vacant for a year and a half, the apartment operator must list the commercial business and must make it open to the public at all times. These requirements have been shared with the applicant, and they are in agreement with the proposed requirements. The project is exempt from CEQA as per CEQA guidelines section 15332, which governs the infill developments, which governs the infill development projects, and is consistent with the general plan and zoning. It's less than 5 acres in size and is surrounded by a lot of urban uses. The property has no value to habitat for rare and endangered species. There are no significant impacts caused by traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality. The site can be served by all required utilities and public services. Staff is recommending that Planning Commission adopt Resolution PC 2023-12, granting approval of the development review and the use permit associated with the project. That concludes my presentation this evening. Staff will be available for any questions that you may have, so as the project applicant is also here with his team to address any questions that Planning Commission members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Matunga and Ms. Sheehan. Now is a time for questions for staff. Those questions that relate to the applicant, let's hold until we have the applicant presentation. But if the commissioners have questions relative to what the staff presentation has been so far, let's have those now.
I do have questions. Thank you for the presentation. I would like a little bit more information about the use permit key requirements for the commercial business. So if the coffee shop goes out of business, then within 6 months they have to lease it, and it says to a commercial business. Can you give us more context of what constitutes a commercial business? Coffee shop, yogurt shop, what does that entail?
The most important thing is for the coffee shop to remain in operation to serve members of the public. I don't know whether I've answered all your questions or you want me to.
I'd like to ask another question about the coffee shop, actually a couple. Go ahead.
I guess my question was more I know what a commercial business is, but any type of commercial business, is there any requirements of what type of business needs to be housed at that location?
Sure.
Thank you.
So under our zoning ordinance for the zoning designation of commercial office, there are several different types of land uses that are permitted, not permitted, or conditionally permitted. So that would range from food and beverage, like a coffee shop, to office, obviously. I think that restaurants are also permitted. Some personal services are permitted, let's say nail salon, hair salon. So there's a wide range. Our zoning ordinance identifies all those separate land uses. But there are several that would be permitted in this particular zone.
Thank you. And then just to follow up on that, if that's granted, and it's a different type of business, would that have to come back to the Planning Commission for approval? Or is it just a blanket approval for all types of commercial business?
If it is a business that is already permitted in the CO zone, it would not come back to the Planning Commission.
Thank you both.
If I may. So You outlined that this coffee shop or this commercial space has to be continuously in operation, et cetera. There was nothing that said how many hours it has to be opened.
That is correct. So from a mixed-use perspective, we just wanted to maintain both the commercial and residential component, which is why that condition was added. But in terms of how that commercial component is operated, we actually defer to the business operators since they're going to understand their market. But there are no extra conditions. That is something if the Planning Commission has a desire to do, they may be able to add that condition. I say may because I want to make sure our legal counsel is in tune to make sure we're not adding any conditions that would make the project infeasible. As I outlined for SB 330, we have to kind of be mindful of the kinds of conditions that we apply to the project.
And maybe I misunderstood, misread. I thought it said that this was going to be for drive-up service exclusively.
So we have heard that comment. I apologize if there is kind of some mislanguage in there. It is not for drive-up, it's walk-up. So you don't enter the building to get to the coffee shop. There are windows that you would access from the exterior.
Thank you.
Following up on the question about the commercial business, so say it becomes an office space later on that's solely used for employees. Do they have to serve the public, as in the public has to have access to that space? Or is it just that it could be turned into an office space where they serve the public, but it's only for like maybe however many employees would fit in that space?
That is, the latter part is correct. So let's say it turns into some type of office business, and that business is not public-facing, then it works as a commercial component for those employees or for that business. It doesn't necessarily have to be public-facing where anybody can obtain a service. So if it is an office business that doesn't interface directly with the public, it would still qualify as a commercial tenant.
And just a couple of more quick questions. So is my understanding, what you said earlier, this is a walk-up coffee shop, so there's not going to be any seating for the public?
There's a provision for 2 seats located on separate areas, but within the same frontage of the store.
Yeah, let me pull, sorry for the quick. So if you see here, there's outdoor seating areas identified, getting my laser pointer right here. And then there's also a little gate that brings you to another covered patio area that is here. So you don't enter the coffee shop, but park your car somewhere or walk to it, hopefully. Go to the window, get your coffee, get your snack, and then you can hang out in these outdoor seating areas.
But if I'm looking at it correctly, only the outdoor seating is for the coffee shop customers. So that means in the rainy season, there won't be a covering for those using the coffee shop?
The top of the screen is the covered patio seating area.
Is that for, I'm sorry, I'm a little.
So there is a gate here, and I'm sure our applicant will identify, but my interpretation of this gate right here means that if you are a customer of the coffee shop, you can sit in this covered patio area or the outdoor seating area that is not covered.
Okay, I'm sorry, because I'm just reading in tiny, tiny words, it looks like covered patio residents only. Ooh. Okay, thank you. Just one more question. When you're asking about the development review tonight, where it's on the bill to approve the development review, what do you mean by development review exactly? So it's just reviewing the project?
Correct. So that would be for the site plan, essentially, where the buildings are sited, the architecture, the parking, the landscaping, all of the construction aspects, if you will, of the project.
Thank you both for your patience.
Any other questions from commissioners? If not, let me ask you regarding the fence. Was 6 foot established by staff? Is that a standard separation height? Is that subject to a discussion about having it higher, given the elementary school?
Sure. So our code doesn't mandate a 6-foot masonry wall or any kind of separation, so it was at our discretion. I see Dave flipping through our code. There are some sections under the commercial development regulations that identify 6 feet, but it's usually when it interfaces a residential zone. So commercial to public facility or to the school in this instant, there are no specific mandates for it.
And the nature of the fence itself, the materials, is that yet to be specified?
In the conditions, it's a heavy timber, or so heavy wood fence where your wood slats would overlap each other, so you wouldn't have any gaps in it. However, the condition is also worded that it is subject to the review and approval of the city and the school district. So at time of permit review, if the project is approved, we would be tapping the school district to check in with them, hey, are you okay with this wood fence, or are you looking for a different type of material?
And I'll quote from the city code. It's section 25.30.3, which gets to screening between different uses, and so that fence is a screen between different uses. And what it says is that whenever new non-residential development will abut a residential use or vacant land in a residential zoning district, which this isn't, but we have a residential use and a non-residential use here. It says the developer shall construct a 6-foot high, it specifies 6 feet in the code, and it gives a choice of a masonry wall if it's along a drive aisle or a parking area. But if it's not along a drive aisle or a parking area, it says that that should be either a solid wall, but not masonry, it doesn't have to be masonry, or a heavy timber fence. So any of that, but masonry, which is typically the blocks, a normal kind of a true sound wall. But the code is pretty explicit that 6 feet is the height. If there is an identified noise impact between the two, then you'd look to any additional mitigation that you would need. But the noise study for this did not identify a need for an additional height above 6 feet.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure we all have a number of questions for the applicant, but before we bring the applicant up, would you mind speaking to the discussion and background analysis staff had relative to the 150 versus 136 square foot common area space?
Sure. Am I going the right way? Okay, good. Making sure I'm going the right way in the slides here. So when it comes to common open space, our codes, our regulations require certain levels of amenities. It's really small on the screen here, but to identify some of the amenities the project is proposing, there is a running trail or walking trail that's identified in blue that wraps the site. It actually then connects into a sidewalk, which is why the blue drops off, but it does circle the entire site as one of their amenities. In addition to that exercise path, there are also exercise equipment, which are these little green squares. They have a dog park or a dog run in pink right here. And then they have areas for cornhole, barbecue, and picnicking in the yellow, red, and purple. And then, of course, the clubhouse itself has a fitness center, a lounge, and a couple other amenities for the residents to enjoy. So from a staff perspective, we evaluated the types of amenities proposed. We evaluated the request that they're looking for. It's about a 14 square foot per unit difference, and we felt that there is enough amenity here, especially with the greater connection to the surrounding area, that we could support or recommend Planning Commission support the reduction in square footage.
So in total, the square footage would roughly be about 1,000 square feet. Is that?
Yes,
about
it's
correct?
roughly 1,000 square feet less than the requirement, but if you actually total all of the square footage that they have, they're only about 200 square feet shy. I think the request was a bit of a buffer for themselves, but they are very close to meeting the regulation, but they are not.
Thank you. Commissioner Paul.
Yes. Yeah, I was going through the staff report online, and I did find the previous proposals. In 2015, the same site was approved for 17,000 square feet community center and banquet hall, and then again in 2019, the same space was approved for 52,000 square feet office space, but nothing happened to that space after that. So was it the same company who was doing, getting the proposals and accepted from the planning commission, or it's a different company this time?
Yes, so I'll have to defer to the applicant if they were always the property owner at that time. I don't recall if they were the applicant for the event center, but they were the applicant for the office.
So basically, it's the third proposal for the same site.
It's the third proposal for the same site, and I know for a fact that this one proposed in front of you tonight and the office building was from the same applicant. What I can't recall is the event center.
Yeah, and, excuse me, the event center was a different applicant, but it's really on a separate property to the west. It's all a part of that same office complex that this is a part of, but it's a separate property and was a separate developer.
If there are no other questions, let's invite the applicant. Did you have a question?
Yes, I have a final question. Since we were talking about the fence that's going to be between the space and the school, I was wondering, since it's a three-story project, will the balconies be facing the school? Because if I'm not mistaken, I think the playground is towards the back of the school. I'm not sure, but I'm just wondering if, like, the balconies will be facing the elementary school.
Yeah, the developer did their best to mitigate so that kids would have privacy when they are playing in the playground. So they've taken all measures to make sure that kids won't be exposed to a lot of eyes from above the buildings. So that there's a condition to that effect as well.
And you can see on the site plan here, so this is Nelda Mundy to the top of the screen. It's a little hard to see, but this is the entry parking lot to the school. So if this building 1 does have balconies here, that would see that parking lot. But I believe that the playground is right here. So the clubhouse has been situated there, being 1 story, won't have overhead view. And then building 3 was scooched as far away as possible and also turned, so it's this side elevation, should there be any attempt to a visual, and there's no windows or balconies here.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I believe the applicant will be addressing the design element and view corridors as well. And just before we bring up the applicant, I want to disclose to my fellow commissioners that at the request of the applicant, I met with them prior to this meeting to review and listen to their proposal.
I too was invited to review the applicant's design plan, and which I did.
Just same thing.
All right, if there are no other comments, John Barkley, representing the applicant, we invite you to come forward. Sorry, I open the public comment period and invite Mr. Barkley to give the presentation on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Real quick, from a time perspective, I have 3 minutes, or could I be granted a few more minutes?
Yes, we discussed that. We would encourage you to be 5-6 minutes. There'll be plenty of time afterwards
Yes.
to clarify points.
Absolutely, and I've practiced this speech many times, and I was at 5 minutes and 14 seconds, so hopefully I'll get it. And I'm not a real eloquent public speaker, so I do apologize that I'm going to be reading this. There are things I really want to say, and then I can answer a number of questions, and those questions I can't answer, we have, our whole team is here, so thank you. So greetings, commissioners. Thank you for hearing this tonight. Really appreciate it. And acknowledgement and great thanks to staff for all your hard work and your presentation. We've been at this for more than a year, and you all know it takes a lot of time, and it takes a village to build a community, that's for sure. So I'm going to step back for a minute and give you a quick overview of who we are And it starts with a guy named Doyle Wiseman, who came to work here in the 80s, late 70s and 80s. And obviously, he started the Wiseman Company. And he started with residential and apartment investment, but then he turned to the development of Class A office buildings. And in 1990, when it became clear that the demand for office buildings was not being met in Solano County and in Fairfield. These buildings continue to thrive today, and our team manages those with great professional, intensity. Customer service for us is the very most important thing. And Doyle's vision, indeed, was delivering a premier real estate product and prioritizing customer satisfaction while serving the community. These concepts drive who we are and what we do today, and we do take heart in a lot of philanthropic efforts throughout the community and have for many years. We believe that Aurora at Green Valley will be a source of pride for the community, and it will provide a wonderful opportunity for all renters, including young professionals, servicemen and women from Travis, and even downsizing empty nesters to live and enjoy the high quality of life that Green Valley does offer its residents. Taking one step back, yes, Wiseman Company, the Wiseman Group, did plan on building a 52,000 square foot office building on this site. And we tried for 2 years to find tenants, big corporate tenants. 52,000 square feet would be, our biggest building. And it was a good building for this site, but for 2 years we tried to find tenants and marketed it, and then COVID hit. So when COVID hit, that really, stopped the big corporate moves to corporate office buildings. We lease our buildings by leasing to 2,000 and 5,000 square foot tenants. This building, as big as it is, needed 10, 20,000 square foot tenants. And so today, with COVID still wreaking havoc kind of on the bigger office market, the outlook for office on this parcel is many years. It would be many years. When we looked at housing, however, the state shortage is so severe that the state itself pushes new housing projects. You heard about SB 330. And the demand for quality rental housing continues to increase with each and every year that passes. For the Aurora parcel, we therefore pivoted to a mixed-use housing development that was consistent with the site's existing general plan and designation and zoning district. Therefore, we do not need a general plan amendment. We do not need a zoning change. We originally presented our initial Aurora design to the community on March 29th, and we fielded many comments at that meeting, and we fielded 1,000 comments since then. And we are acutely aware of the intense focus that the community has had on this project. And we heard and listened to those thoughts and concerns that we know were genuine. We know that there's real concern about various items, and we wanted to address those. So let's see, it's not going to work up there, is it? I have a laser pointer, so I don't know how to indicate. So first, there's a lot of focus on the school. So building 1, when in our initial submittal we had 84 units. And building 1 was the difference. That was a 36-unit building, and it was longer. So it extended more to the east, where that parking is now. So by doing so, it was closer to the Sandy tot lot, the kinder lot there, where kids play, I think kindergartners. It was closer to that, and we knew that that was a big concern. And so, number one, we shortened the building, and we made it 24 units. We moved it further to the west and reduced the intensity on the site and reduced the visual, potential visual alignment. And we've removed windows from that end of the building and the other so that there's no direct line of sight looking kind of right out in the vicinity of the children playing in the kinder lot. So now that building is 150 feet away. There are trees and other things that we think will obstruct, but in any event, We have removed the windows from the east and west end of that building. The west end we've removed also because of the, the immersion school. And it's a matter of privacy. So we wanted to honor that. So we removed the windows, we reduced the intensity. We added parking, we added more parking. Before, as you know, it's 1 stall per unit is required in this zoning. We were providing more than that originally, but that's really not enough. Apartment complexes like this, they need more than that. So we, by reducing units and adding more parking, we improved the parking ratio to about 1.4, and we feel very good about that. So those were a couple of major things we did. We also, there's a gate in the northeast corner that parents every morning and in the afternoon, parents go and they drop kids off. And a really big comment was concerned that that gate was going away. And it's absolutely not. The gate stays, it's being improved. The gate is controlled by the school district, not us. They lock it, they unlock it. Parents will be able to do what they've always done, which is if they're driving into the library parking lot now, they're going to be able to keep doing that. And but what we've done is along the eastern boundary, we've agreed to put in a curb, gutter, and sidewalk. So it's improving the path of travel for students that are being dropped off. If a student gets dropped off, yes, right where the cursor is, they can walk all along the the sidewalk there to the gate. So those were some of the improvements that we implemented, and I think those are the changes. We talked about that. Thank you. The addition of Aurora to the Green Valley Park, which is a permitted use, adds even more diversification to the center. The center is really magnificent. It has a library, it has the immersion school, as I mentioned, it has office buildings, including the Solano County Office of Education. It has 2 office buildings that we do own ourselves, the Wiseman Group. And it has a restaurant in one of our office buildings, and now it'll have an apartment community with a publicly accessible commercial coffee shop. So we think that those who originally created the zoning for this office park, and I think we're going to change the name, by the way, because office park is just boring as heck. So we're going to change that to be something a little more diverse and interesting. But whoever came up with the original zoning, we think would be thrilled with the diversity of uses that have come now to the site. And of course, it's right across the street from more than 300,000 square feet of commercial uses. So we think the area as a whole is quite commercial. From a security standpoint, we've met with the Fairfield Police Department twice. We are going to be seeking certification in the crime-free multi-housing program. So that's a program across the city where there's integration, there's education for residents about how to keep things safe, and what to do if something appears not to be the way it should be. There'll be a lot of education with our tenants with regard to that. And we will have, needless to say, a very extensive security camera network focused on our parking lots and the entrances and the buildings, and the clubhouse. So we're excited and genuinely proud to submit Aurora Green Valley to you tonight for approval. The Wiseman team, including our consultants, are all here to demonstrate our commitment and answer any questions you will have. I'm going to kind of put this into the record as far as these are shows of support from the community. So we'd like to get this submitted. Some of these have been received by your website as well, not all, but some. So I don't know how much time that was, so maybe I hit 5 minutes, I don't know. I did want to clarify, so a lot of talk on the commercial. We've already been talking to Journey Coffee, and I feel okay to bring that up because Journey Coffee wrote a letter that we did submit to the planning staff where they expressed sincere interest in this location for the use. We haven't signed a lease because it's a year and a half out, and you don't usually sign a lease that far out. But that use we love, and we think it would be a great amenity, not just for these residents, but for all the office employees that are in the center. There's a lot, there's about 300 employees, 250 to 300 employees there that are there every day. And so there's sincere interest, and we talked about hours. Somebody had a question on hours, and, again, driven by the operator, but they think about 7 a.m. perhaps to about 1:30 or 2. That would be the general time it'd probably be open. A comment was made about the, you had another thing that zoomed up a little closer, but the covered patio is actually just for residents. So that gate is going to say residents only from the commercial side. But the depiction of outdoor seating is very preliminary, and we're going to provide as much outdoor seating as we can, including on the front. There's a wide sidewalk there, and we're going to, I don't know what code's going to stop us from providing for outdoor seating, but we'll provide as much as we can and as much as the operator wants, and we'll also put umbrellas there for, if it's raining or something like that. But that coffee shop we think is going to be a hit, and for parents dropping off kids too, we hope they can walk over as well. So I hope that clarifies a little bit on the coffee shop.
Thank you, Mr. Barclay. We appreciate that presentation. Let's open it up to the commissioners for questions to the applicant.
So I'm not a fan, and this doesn't stop the project or make it go forward. Heavy wood fence doesn't impress me. I would like to see something personally that says something more of brick, non-scalable, that kind of thing. I think that'll make parents sleep a lot better if we have and I realize that adds cost, but that's just an opinion.
I hear you.
Other questions? Okay, I do have a couple. I think it might be helpful if you, Meili, could bring up the overall view. If the applicant would identify the other buildings that they own in that business park.
Sure. Yep, so that building right there we call Green Valley Executive Center. It was built in 2006, and that is one of the Wiseman buildings. It's 46,000 square foot
Right.
office building. You know the library, city-owned land and county-run library. And the office above where it says Center Drive, that is Solano County Office of Education. I don't know how many square feet that is, actually. It's a fairly good-sized two-story building. And the office to the left is what we call Green Valley West. It's another office building. We, the Wiseman Group, purchased that in 2018. That was a building that North Bay used to occupy, but it was owned by an offshore owner for a long time, and then it was vacant for 5 years, and we bought it. And now it's almost fully leased, and we're putting in the state of California there in an 8,000 square foot lease in about 30 days.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Also,
and the immersion school too, so.
I'm sorry?
And the immersion school is the other building in the center.
Yes.
Those are the members.
I mostly just wanted to know the buildings, have everyone become familiar with which ones you own and control.
Yes.
With respect to bus service, do you have bus service? I know it goes along Business Center Drive, but do you know where it goes?
I'm not an expert at that. I've been there many times when I see the bus go on the private loop road, and it makes a few stops, including, I think, right in front of Aurora, or maybe right where the cursor is. Do you know that? Yeah. So it does service the loop, the private loop road, yes.
And with respect to the difference in common area,
Yes.
if that were not approved, what adjustments do you envision having to make with the buildings?
No adjustments to the buildings at all. It would be activating some more green area with maybe a picnic table. So we're only short about 160 feet. And, so, we can make that happen. That's not the end of the world, and we asked for 1,000. So these calculations have been going on this last week, and I feel like the formula changed a little bit, and so we dipped under.
So I'm not following the calculation. If the difference is 14 square feet and you use 72 units, that's plus or minus 1,000 square
The
feet.
difference isn't 1,000. We asked for 1,000 as cushion because we weren't sure how the final calculation.
Okay, based on the current design, it's really
100
only 160, so what, 2 square feet
Yeah,
difference?
2 or 3, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, then my final comment to you as the applicant, and then we'll, if there are no further questions, open it up or invite the public to speak. But calling this a mixed use for 106 or 130 square feet, commercial stretches, any reasonable definition. Now, I fully acknowledge that the city code does not specify the number of square feet or percentage to qualify as a mixed use. And that is an item we will correct in the future. But if you really want to be considered a mixed use, why did you not consider being truly a mixed use, not just 130 square feet?
It's a small lot to begin with, number one, and 72 units, to reduce the unit count more would render the project, I don't know if it's infeasible, but it's definitely a very slow unit count. As you add retail, you have to add tons more parking. So retail drives tons of traffic and parking requirements. So you start adding more retail, you're really adding a ton more traffic and parking requirements, and your unit count just goes down fast. There's 300,000 feet of retail across the street. This center is an office center with privately owned parcels right abutting against each other. There's a school, there's a library, we have a restaurant in our office building. We felt that there was enough commercial provision in this area, and really to add more commercial to this site, it would not have been feasible for us.
So I understand that, and I understand the argument that the overall business center helps the feeling of a mixed use. But within this project, I just want to say, going forward, we're going to change that so that that does not constitute the definition of a mixed use. 130 square feet just boggles my mind.
Yeah.
Having said that, I understand the applicant has followed the requirements as presented by and requested by the city. So,
May I make
yes.
one more quick comment? I had I missed a comment I was going to go over in time. I was going to also mention that the office building drove a lot more traffic in the traffic studies. Traffic will be something you probably are going to ask questions on, and I understand that. And our traffic folks are here, and so is the cities. But the office building produced nearly twice as many daily trips as the 72 units. And if you looked at commercial, from our understanding, if you put 6,000 feet of commercial, let's say, on this site, that 6,000 feet alone would drive as much traffic, especially in the morning, as the 72-unit project. So my point is, commercial, retail is very intensive as to traffic, and the 72 units of residential is really the least impactful development you could do here in terms of retail or office.
Thank you.
Okay.
Did you?
I would have to agree with Chairman Matthews on that, because the sense that I get about it is that people are going to be walking from the library, from the office, and to me, to have such this is one of the few like mixed-use walkable areas where you'll have like an actual apartment building next to libraries and jobs. So it's really great in that way. And to have a coffee shop right there that's only going to have outdoor seating for people who are walking over. And the clubhouse is, if I read the tiny numbers correctly, looks like 200 and something square feet.
The what?
The clubhouse?
No, it's
What was this?
3,000 feet.
Okay. So, but the clubhouse is connected to the coffee house, is that?
The coffee shop is in the south west corner of it, but it is not, there's no internal access.
Okay.
It's a part of the building, but it's not accessible. So the clubhouse is really for residents, and the commercial is really, we're leasing it to, the coffee vendor, and they don't have an access into the clubhouse.
Gotcha. Okay, now I see it a little clearer. It
Okay.
just seems, yeah, we could have utilized space a little differently since people ideally would be walking over there and not driving. But
Yeah.
thank you for your presentation.
Sure.
Thanks for asking about that. Thank you, Mr. Barkley. And we do have a large number of individuals that have filled out speaker cards. If there's anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak, you'll have 3 minutes, and there are green cards here you can fill out. Just before we bring up the first few speakers, how many do we have online that wish to speak?
Right now, I see one hand raised.
Okay, so we'll work that in somewhere during this period. So let's,
I'm sorry, Commissioner Matthew, can you give an estimate about approximately how many cards? that you-
there are 12,
And
13.
would this be a good moment to have a 5-minute break before we engage in public
Sure.
comments?
Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. hearing portion of this meeting. I'm going to read two names simultaneously. The first one will be the first speaker and then on-deck speaker. So we'll start with Noah Rumbada, and apologies for mispronunciation, and Judy Corvota. Let's proceed. And again, 3 minutes per speaker.
Good afternoon, Chair, Planning Commissioners. My name is Noah Rumbala, he, him. I'm a lifelong 20-plus year resident of Fairfield, specifically the Green Valley and Cordelia area. And I'm here to talk about two different topics. The first is the merits of the project. This project, Aurora Green Valley, is the exactly type of project that we need to be approving because it helps to create that mixed-use, walkable environment that we're really missing in Cordelia at the moment. It's a place where residents would be able to walk to the library, go get some food at some local restaurants, go to Costco and Safeway to do their grocery shopping, all while reducing vehicle miles traveled and reducing their traffic impact, while also creating a more lively Green Valley. It's also an infill development helping to preserve our city's agricultural spaces and Sun Valley, Green Valley. It's consistent with the general plan and zoning being something that's conditionally permitted within the office commercial zone. And it helps to increase the housing options available in Cordelia, Green Valley. Up until 10 years ago, there was only one apartment site in all of Cordelia and Green Valley. And so this helps to fulfill that demand for walkable mixed-use places, bring in some of that high-density housing that we're severely lacking in Cordelia and Green Valley. The other parts of the comments that I want to address relate to the Planning Commission's discretion because, as staff mentioned in the report and in their presentation, the Planning Commission has very limited discretion when it comes to this project because it was filed under the Housing Accountability Act, or SB 330. Failure to comply with SB 330, as mentioned earlier, may cause the city to be vulnerable to litigation. And so I just want to warn the commission about that because the Planning Commission can really only deny the project if it finds that there's a specific adverse impact on the public health or safety. And also the applications before the commission tonight also define the limits of the Planning Commission's discretion. It's the development review and the conditional use permit. There's specific findings for approval that have to be made that were in the resolution in the packet. And those findings include whether it's consistent with the general plan and zoning, which it is, if the project's design will cause economic or visual decay, which it has a modern design. It's also a subjective finding, so it's not really relevant per SB 330. Whether the project complies with CEQA, which it's categorically exempt from, whether it's compatible with the surrounding land uses, which it creates that mixed-use walkable environment, whether city infrastructure will be available to serve the project, which it's an infill project, so all the infrastructure is already there, and whether the project will create an overabundance of use, which it won't because it's primarily a commercial area. And so as proposed in condition, the project meets the required findings for approval, and I ask that the Planning Commission approve the project. Thank you.
Noah, you did very well. 2.5 minutes. After Judy, we'll have Jessica Jensen.
Hello, and thank you all. There's a lot of concerns I have, but a lot of you have covered the same issues, and more will be covering them. One of my main thing is, if you're going north on Green Valley Road, when you get to Business Center Drive, you can wait 8 minutes before you get to go again. And that's the normal flow of traffic. Now, I know Nelda Monday has a tremendous amount because of the track we live in. It can take me forever if you hit it in that 8 o'clock hour when they're going to school, or in the 1:30 to 2:30 hour when the parents are picking them up. You can sit there forever also. It's just that we're adding more traffic with another apartment building. And my understanding is the library uses a lot of the parking area there, which is becoming, from what I understand tonight, that'll become their access, extra parking areas, you know, where the library is, and then there's a parking lot, and then they'll kind of go over there because most people have more than one car. Okay, so then they can only have a parking place for one. Well, then they have to go out there. So we're adding more and more, and it's not fair to everyone else. The people at the library run out of space. they take over that, now what? I've got a lot of other issues, but I'm backing down tonight. I'm trying not to get angry because I've been against this apartment complex forever. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Jessica Jensen and then Jolynn Von Strong.
Hi, and thank you for hearing me. So I'm Jessica Jensen. I have 2 children in El Mundy Elementary, and I have 1 younger child who attends the La Academy preschool just next door. I think I speak on behalf of many parents who are very concerned about the safety of our children with this development going in. I appreciate some of the changes that were recognized tonight where the buildings were shortened so that there wasn't a direct overlook to the playground. I'm going to speak to the reality of what us parents face every single morning when we send our kids to school, and that is school shootings. There was 53 school shootings already this year, and there was 51 last year. It's continuing to go up. Building 2 has balconies that face that playground. They may not have as great of a viewpoint to watch the children play, but we've all seen what happened in Las Vegas when a shooter came out of the hotel and shot out at a concert and killed a number of people. It is the #1 concern. Every morning, I make sure I say goodbye to my children with a hug and a smile, even if I'm yelling at them to get their butts in the car because they're late, because I don't know if they're coming home that day. And that's a reality that parents face. And on top of the traffic issues that create all sorts of other safety concerns, I honestly believe that the impact and the ability that you're just putting the safety of those almost 900 children is really big concern that we need to think about and figure out, is that considered a big enough adverse safety impact to the children that go to that school and the people around it. And even though they're now moved it, it's still that parking lot where during those hours of picking up, they still have access to them, to see them, to watch them, to provide harm to them. So I ask that you, I guess, don't approve this moving forward and consider that safety impact to the students.
Thank you for your comments. Jessica Jensen, excuse me, that was you. Jolynn Von Strong, followed by Christina Elder.
Thank you. My name's Jocelyn Von Strong, for the record. As an honorary commander, a past honorary commander at Travis Air Force Base, we know that Travis Air Force Base is integral to Solano County, right? I think we can all agree to that. Part of the selection process for Air Force bases to stay in place or leave is housing. Solano County does not have enough housing, and we need to provide that for our men and women of the U.S. Air Force. That's my main concern. I support this project, and I believe that it will address the issues, at least partially address the issue of housing here locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina, and then Gladys Boeing.
Hello, everyone. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the Planning Commission, members of the public. My name is Christina Elder. I am a very long-time resident of Solano County. I do work for Wiseman Commercial. However, I wanted to come up here tonight to just remind you all of the reputation that Wiseman Commercial has in this community. We've been around for over 40 years. Right here in Fairfield and in Solano County. We have a stellar reputation in this community. Many of us are on boards and commissions. We're very, very active in the community. Most importantly, we live in this community, right? Many of you know developers come in and they develop in cities that they don't live in, but we do. So we would never do anything that would negatively impact the city or be detrimental to this community because we love this place, right? So anyways, I hope you all vote yes, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Gladys, and then Derek Bromstead.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the parents at here in Green Valley and in the Bloom community. First, I wanted to say that I agree with Ms. Jessica on her safety concern, but also as a parent from that with kids is going to Nelda Mundy School, this is the reality. Did you know that Nelda Mundy is over-enrolled this year? My child came home to inform us that there's not enough teacher to properly educate them. Nelda Mundy had to bring a retired teacher out of retirement because there's no one teaching these kids. And also, the communication was also sent 10 days after the first day of school. This caused stress to the staff, to the teachers, to the parents, and the students. Imagine that, 7 years old. All right, so we're concerned about the impact on the children. We already have enrollment crisis before this project. So we could only anticipate the problem to exacerbate when this project is approved. So I don't approve this project, just to be clear. And let's talk about 72 residents, 72 people that will require school for their kids. That's inevitable. That will happen. And this increase in enrollment is a serious issue because this affects the mental health of the kids. This affects the lack of resources. I don't know about you, I'm a parent and I'm trying to raise my kids to have the right education and resources so I can help them to become better leaders, not only for the community, but also for this country. So I'm asking you to play the long game, to invest in our kids, and I don't agree with this project. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comments. We'll hear now Derek, followed by Carol Chervinko.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Derek Bromstead, and I am almost a 5-year resident here of Fairfield. But I have been coming to Fairfield for much longer than that. My parents had owned a business for 36 years, so I have seen it change and I have seen it grow, and it has been a wonderful thing that influenced my decision to actually move here and live here and play here. I'm also the Fairfield Pickleball president as well, too. I do want to disclose that I am a Wiseman commercial employee. However, even before I even knew what Wiseman was, I would go to the library or I would go to Sticky Rice, which is one of my favorite restaurants, and saw the empty plot of land there and thought, you know what? This actually would be a cool place for some residential units. And that was even also before I knew the true, I mean, I'm from Chicago, you know, it's packed there, but it's nothing compared to California here. And that was before I even knew that, you know, what a need there is for housing in this area. Now, it's also a little bit selfish for me too to want more residential because I have 2 kids that are in their 20s and 30s that are still living with me. And I was very much hoping to be an empty nester at this point, but I'm not. So please, you know, for the sake of getting them out of the house, please, you know, so let's support this project, and I hope that you do. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next, Carol, and then following Carol, let's pick up our online person. So if the online person can be prepared to speak afterwards, please.
Thank you to the chair and the vice chair and the commission today. I appreciate the time given to us. I first want to show you the results of Solano Speaks and what the last page says. It says that it begins with the voice of the voters in Solano County, and it is our vote that counts the most. So I hope you can listen to people today, for the residents, and to make a informed vote on the schools, on the size of this area, and on the mixed use with the small coffee shop that we don't know what it will turn into later on. Senate Bill 330, while it was not said, was initially intended for expedited housing in regions suffering the worst shortage and highest rates of displacement from the fires in 2018 and 2019. It was not intended for what Wiseman wants to do today. It was for displaced persons. And if anyone from the fire is going to be a resident, please let them tell us, because then they are following the true intent of Senate Bill 330. As well, the Title 14, Section 15332, the infill development, it does require that the project is consistent with the general plan. It is not clear to me what general plan that is. Is it the general plan that is currently inactive, or is it the general plan that has yet to be voted on? Subsection D also states that the project should not result in any significant traffic effects, but we all know that it does already at Green Valley and Business Center Drive. I agree, it takes 8 minutes if you happen to miss the light. This area is already densely developed. I also want to make for the record there is only one grocery store. There are not two. Safeway is a retail grocery store, while Costco is a membership warehouse club. Each has a different class assigned to them by the American Industry Classification System that is used by federal statistical agencies. I ask and I hope that the voters that you hear today, you make an informed decision and to use the area for something different. Thank you.
Can you bring on the online?
Yeah, if we could have our online speaker brought live for the public hearing, and when they're ready to speak, please begin your comments.
And after the online speaker, we'll have Jared Newmeyer.
Hello, this is Brenda.
Please go ahead, Brenda.
This is Brenda Villanueva Nikolai. Tonight, I'm going to speak to you on the traffic study provided by Fair Peers in regards to this Aurora proposal. While there have been numerous questions on the coffee shop, and yet no commissioners have asked about the traffic study. So here's what I found from reading the traffic study. The traffic study on page 18 by Fair Peers, data collection was completed on weekdays from 7 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. in December of 2022. This is paraphrased since I only have 3 minutes. First, I want to point out data collection should have been from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 4 to 7 p.m., especially in this immediate area. The traffic study misses 2 full hours of countless residents leaving and returning to this area. People commuting to San Francisco or Oakland, there is no way they are leaving later than 7 a.m. Several neighbors on my street go into the office Thursday mornings and they leave no later than 6:30 a.m. I myself go into the office in San Francisco on Thursdays and we leave at 6:30 a.m. And there's still a 3 to 4 minute wait for the rotation of lights to flow through on Green Valley Road and Business Center Drive to get to the freeway. Also, those same individuals are not returning before 6 p.m. Even when I commuted on the ferry Barton train, I never appeared into the area until after 6 p.m. and it still was quite busy in the immediate intersections between that time frame. This would include individuals who may be living in this proposed apartments. It is also highlighted in the traffic study, same page, page 18, 2017 and 2018 counts were higher than 2022 counts at most of the study intersections. However, vehicle traffic along Business Center Drive were higher in 2022 than 2017 and 2018 due to the Business Center Drive extension between Mangles Boulevard and Julia Berger Drive and the opening of several new developments along the corridor. Note, not paraphrased. This is the one thing the study got right. The vehicle traffic along Business Center Drive between Mangles and Julia Berger Drive was higher due to several new developments in the immediate area. And with this coffee shop also being presented as part of the project, so we're adding more vehicles to this already congested area. The traffic study fails to include any information how a coffee shop and their vehicles would impact the traffic. One more thing, the traffic study also does not take into consideration weekends when people descend on the Costco at 9:30 a.m. to the end of the day. We all know that the immediate area has tons of shoppers all day long. Commissioners, I ask you not to approve this project. I understand we must fulfill a requirement to the state for SB 330, yet approving this project outright disregards the traffic study that says, yes, we have higher traffic in this immediate area than 2017, and will be even more impacted once the new Nova apartments are built just across the street, and improving this project will impact traffic even more. Even more importantly, approving this project will impact this area, already congested area, and impede us on evacuating residents when escaping a natural disaster such as fire. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Brenda. Jared? And then after Jared, Deanne DiNumano.
Good evening, Fairfield City Planning Commissioners. Thank you for having us all here tonight. I'm Jared Newmeyer, the President and CEO of the Fairfield Sassoon Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here to show our Chamber's strong support for the Aurora at Green Valley apartment project by Wiseman Commercial. This project is really important for the community and for California, as it is the first in Fairfield under the SB 330. It's a big step forward to help us meet the growing need for different housing options, especially apartments in our area. This infill project is planned for 5000 Wiseman Way and is in a great spot to fit within a mix of homes and businesses that are already there. It's going to offer a place to live for many people, especially young professionals, our airmen, and our veterans from Travis Air Force Base, and graduating students from Solano Community College nearby just starting their careers. We appreciate how Wiseman Commercial has been listening to what the community wants. We've made changes to their original plans, or they've made changes to their original plans, like reducing the number of apartments from 84 to 72, adding a sidewalk for the Nelda Mundy Elementary students and parents to use, and even a coffee shop for the community to use to make sure the project is a good fit in our area. Aurora will bring more life to our local shops like Safeway and Costco, which actually need more business in that area, and will be a big plus for our economy to attract new retail to the area. The project plans also include some cool features like exercise loop and EV chargers, which I think will make an even better community. Wiseman Commercial has been building great projects in Fairfield for nearly 50 years, and they care a lot about our community. They always look for ways to give back and to help our area grow and thrive. In sum, our Chamber of Commerce is all in for the Aurora and Green Valley apartment project. We think it's going to be a key part of the community's growth and development. I hope the planning commissioners give their support to the project tonight, and I'd also like the city staff, which they did a great job today, to kind of explaining about the SB 330 and how it's helping to speed up the important housing projects like this one. Thank you for listening, and we're excited to see this project come to life to make our community even a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean Ann, followed by Denise Coates.
Hi, I'd like to read this letter from the president of the Solano Economic Development Corporation. Dear City of Fairfield City Council and Fairfield Planning Commission, I want to express my support for the Aurora at Green Valley apartment project in Fairfield. The vacant 2.75 acre parcel is located at 5000 Wiseman Way. This happens to be adjacent to the Solano EDC office. There are all types of housing in the surrounding area, including a development of starter homes immediately to the west. There is, however, not enough multifamily by a long shot. I know that the surrounding businesses will be thrilled to have a development that will cater to young professionals across the street to frequent the restaurants and shops. As you may know, the project site is zoned office commercial, where residential development is allowed with a conditional use permit. Wiseman held a community meeting on March 29th to present its plans to the neighbors and the community. Based on feedback from that meeting, it's evident that Wiseman listened to our concerns and has now submitted revised plans to the city, including 72 units instead of the 84 originally submitted, as well as other changes, reducing the impact of this community on the surroundings. Wiseman's modifications reflect that many in the community have asked for. They care about our community as they are a local-based company. The Wiseman partners, too, are concerned about the success and prosperity of this region. Through their ongoing volunteer and philanthropic efforts throughout our city, they share a passion for doing what is right. I support this project because we need every level of housing in Fairfield and in Solano County to address key housing shortages that this region faces. If we are to attract the kind of high-value employers that create high-wage jobs, it's crucial that we continue to diversify our housing stock. We are particularly lacking in the kind of market-rate multifamily developments that young professionals are looking for, and we are losing that demographic in droves because we aren't building for them. Wiseman Commercial has a very good reputation as a Class A developer in the region with nearly 50 years of experience developing and operating office and residential properties as well. I'm confident that this project will be successful, and I urge you to support the 72 units multifamily proposal.
Thank you. Denise, followed by Suka. Denise Coates, sorry. I thought I had announced that before.
How are you tonight? I've lived in Green Valley for 30 years. When it was a hidden gem and we had Price Club and Tower Mart down on Rockville and Sassoon Road. That's what we had. It's good to see it grow, but it's quite sad to see it grow. My concern is the traffic. I know we have a intersection, Green Valley Road. We have more subdivisions going in. We have a subdivision going in the future down Green Valley Road, impacting all that traffic coming through Mangles into Green Valley Road. We have Rockville at the Ice House going to build a wine destination. We're growing. We have an intersection. We have a building going in, most likely. When are you going to bring in all those materials? I hope not during the day. I'd like to see them come in at night when all is quiet and our intersection is empty, so we don't have to deal with big trucks and equipment. We already have storage units where we have 18-wheelers coming through Green Valley intersection. We have a lot of traffic, and we just keep adding. We need to add another intersection somewhere else. Abernathy's pretty inadequate. So thank you for your time, and have a great evening.
Thank you for sharing. Suka, followed by W.T. Jean-Pierre.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for allowing the opportunity for the community, the folks who are going to be most impacted by this decision to share their perspectives. I'm Sook. I'm a resident of Green Valley. I live in the Bloom Harvest community. I grew up in Green Valley too. I was part of the first graduating class of Rodriguez High. I want to start by saying I hope you're also counting the 150 plus emails from residents in the community that came through, and thousands more who don't support this project, and many who couldn't be here because of work and family commitments. So I understand we need housing, but not just housing. We need affordable housing, and I'm not sure if that's what this is going to provide. We don't need housing in this little patch of land because of all the contextual issues that people have talked about. And people go where the jobs are. The jobs aren't here. I know. I did it. I commuted to the Bay Area my entire time while I lived here. And the jobs don't pay well either. I share many of the same concerns as Jessica and Gladys about the concerns of parents and enrollment and safety, and as well as the traffic issues. My kid is 4 and attends a preschool. We walk to school every day. We look out for cars, and I'm hearing all of these ratios around cars, overflow of cars, visitors to the coffee shop. Where are these people going to park? People do have more than 1 car per household. So I'm thinking about, will it overflow to our neighborhood? And so I'm getting anxiety just thinking about crossing the street with a 4-year-old. And it's not just me who walks to school or takes our kids to school. As I mentioned, I'm thinking about the traffic and the congestion at the intersections, just as was described. Costco, their gas stations are expanding. They're going to have pizza. We know more people will come. My husband is excited about that. There's the GV3 apartments, what's happening on Rockville. It's all so much at the same time, and we need to think about this holistically, and I hope you do too, because we're going to bear the brunt of the impact for many years, as are our kids. I am a public health researcher too. Here are some of the public health risks that I'm thinking about right now. Construction, noise, and pollution. The playground is open at the preschool right there. The kids play outside and they see everything. They are seen by everybody and anyone that's there. Air quality and noise, emergency exit routes in case of wildfires. Imagine everyone having to leave at the same time in that area. So I'll quickly wrap up. So opponents of SB 330 were concerned about lack of community input, and we're also concerned about traffic congestion, which everyone seems to be naming as far as folks who live in the community. So I'm really hoping that you take community consideration into your decision. And thanks again for allowing us to share our input. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. WT, and then if there's anybody else on the online, let's pick that up, and then we'll have our last speaker. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. Deputy Jean-Pierre, I know we have a lot of complaints about what's going on in the community. I've been in the community for quite a few years. I've had a business in the community for 27 years. And the thing is that I knew that Green Valley have developed quite a bit. And I hear the same thing going over now as per the parties that growing the population. The population is everywhere. It's like climate change. It's there. And the traffic is there. But I want to say is that I sit on the executive board of Travis Regional Force Committee. And we have a major problem of finding housing for our military people, a major problem. We have people that comes in for the weekends that travel all the way from Atlanta, Georgia to Los Angeles looking for housing, looking for places. And the units that I'm looking at right now that developing, if it's developed, it will help the military quite a bit. I know there's a lot of complaint, but I always said that the school teachers, there's a school close by that's in that area. Also, the military having school teachers that's coming aboard as well as coming to this area. But I want to say is that one thing we have to all realize, there will be no America without our military. We need to support our military. That's the backbone of this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other online speakers?
There are no hands raised. We do have two people online. If either of you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand feature. But at the moment, we don't have anybody. If we have any other green speaker cards, we could go to that while we wait.
And are there any other public speakers? I see one coming up. Melanie Fisher, and followed Melanie by Nora Dizon.
Hello, my name is Melanie Fisher, and disclosure, I do work with Wiseman and for Wiseman. There is a topic that I'd like to talk about, obviously, that I don't think has been fully highlighted, and that is the integrity and the morals of Wiseman. I began my career with Wiseman 2.5 years ago while I was still in college. I was a senior and ambitious, and I was excited to see what there was next for me. And my first boss was actually Zen Hunter. He's behind me currently. And my first conversations with Zen was not exactly about the job, but the things I could do in the community. He embraced the Wiseman spirit and still does. And that spirit is, what can we do for and with this community? I do live in Solano County, and prior to Wiseman, was not extremely active in my community. Church, yes, but not quite my community as a whole. And through Wiseman, I have been able to enjoy the wonders of what community means, and that is to support one another. I have seen so many wonderful things. I understand the wonders of SafeQuest Solano and what they do to Solano County and for Solano County. And I mention these things not to boast. If anything, a lot of you may not know what we do because we don't like to boast, and we're a little humble over here in Wiseman. But that is to say that projects that we do are to serve and to benefit the community. As John Barkey did share with you, the reason why we built 1261 Travis Boulevard way back when was not because Doyle wanted an office building. It was because he saw a need that other developers were not willing to service. And that, I believe, rings true still today with the Aurora project. As it's been mentioned several times tonight, housing is an issue. I personally am in my earlier 20s, and I have been looking for housing, and that is a struggle that I personally go through. There seems to be two portions of housing, and that's super expensive or something that I do not qualify for because I make just a little bit more. So this is a project I am personally excited about. I do also like coffee, so I'm very happy for that little add-on that we have. But all in all, I would just like to say that my mother has a saying about finding a husband: see how the son treats his mother, and you'll know a lot about how he'll treat you. And I believe Wiseman embraces that same thing because they treat their employees and community just the way I'd like it. I do like it, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anybody come through, raise their hand?
We have no hands raised.
Okay, Nora will be our concluding public hearing speaker.
Good evening, Chairman and the committee members. I thank you for allowing me to speak on this topic. I wanted to be last because the other previous speakers, a lot of them have children, and so they could speak to that issue better than I could. I will reiterate the issue with traffic. When I go to the library for whatever reason, if I go when kids are being picked up, that library parking lot is packed. And I don't believe this project provides enough parking spaces, so I'm assuming the overflow is going to go to the library. So will the people who go to the library be able to find parking? The other thing that other people who live in the area, they talk about how horrible the traffic it is. When they are dealing with kids being picked up from school, there's already a really terrible impact right now, and this is only going to make it worse. I want to thank you very much for pointing out how tiny the coffee shop is. I was just blown away that qualifies this project as mixed use. I mean, it's not even 1% of the square footage. It's 0.1%. It just is unbelievable. Then I want to say that SB 330 originally was to preserve affordable housing. It was so that existing affordable housing would not be torn down and replaced by new housing that was more expensive. That was the original intent. And like Carol spoke about people who are victims of fire, they needed affordable housing. So it was intended for very low, or moderate income households, or an emergency shelter. This is not any of that. This is market rate. So I don't know why people are excited when this is going to be the same rent as the ones that they say are too expensive. Anyway, we know that this is going to have a very bad impact on the people who are living there now. So I really hope you will think about that. The schools have no more capacity, where our people already living in the area are worried about how they're going to be able to get their kids to school in a few years. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nora. If there are no further comments, I do want to say on behalf, I'm sure I speak for many of my colleagues on the commission, we appreciate hearing from the public, and many of us have read every single email that has come in and fully appreciate the concerns that have been raised. With that said, would the city staff like to respond to some of the issues that were raised? Let's see, I need to close first the public. First, I'm closing the public hearing and inviting city staff to respond.
Yes, thank you. So I did my best to take notes during everyone's public comment so that I can add what level of knowledge staff has to respond to some of the questions and comments. So starting with just making sure that all of the emails were heard and read. Thank you, Chair. You did mention that the emails were included in your staff report and the agenda report. I want to note that we received 110 emails. And then in addition to the packet of public comments that the applicant provided today at the dais. So there was a very large amount of public comment. We appreciate your guys' time writing those and also making it out to be here in person. So that's for that item. There was a comment regarding construction noise and pollution. I did want to note that environmental assessments were conducted on the project, looking both at the construction of the project and then also the post, if it were to be fully developed, the operation of the project. Those analyses looked at both the noise and air quality or pollution. In regards to noise, the noise assessment did note that during construction, noise levels may exceed city standards of what is permitted, and there are mitigation measures put in place for a temporary 8-foot sound wall to be installed during the construction to lessen those impacts on the residents and the sensitive receptor of the elementary school. So that would, should the project be approved and go through the permit process, that would be in place during construction to reduce those noise impacts. And then at full build out, the analysis showed that there would be no noise impacts from an operational standpoint. For the air quality or the pollution portion, the analyses showed that all of the impacts were less than significant under BAAQMD or Bay Area Air Quality Management District regulations. So that is the agency that regulates air quality and pollution. And so both during construction and operation, the analysis show that the figures would be under what is considered a significant impact. So wanted to address that item. For parking in the library, we do understand that a lot of parents use the library parking lot for school pickups. Part of this project's conditions and as designed and proposed also include pedestrian improvements. So if you can see on the screen here, and as Tendai had noted earlier, the project will build a sidewalk from that existing gate that accesses the elementary school. That sidewalk will run down the entire property line here, which is adjacent to the library's parking lot. And then there'll also be 2 new crosswalks. So there will be other areas in which the parents could pick up their children. So if they wanted, they could actually be parked at this office parking lot or this office, and there will be safe pedestrian improvements put in place, but with the development of this project to provide extra locations for pickup for parents utilizing this site for their children. And that was that item. And then for, someone had made a comment specifically to the CEQA exemption, the infill exemption. They wanted to know if the consistency to the general plan was our existing general plan or the future general plan to be adopted. CEQA has us looking at our existing general plan, so I did want to highlight that. And as we mentioned in the presentation, the site is zoned CHR or Highway Regional Commercial. This project, being a mixed-use residential commercial project, is consistent with that designation. Additionally, that same commenter also referenced traffic under CEQA. I know we've heard a lot of traffic comments, and I'll defer a little bit to our traffic experts in a moment. But from a CEQA perspective, I did want to highlight that CEQA evaluates vehicle miles traveled. So a few years ago, it used to evaluate level of service. So that would be how long are you stuck at a stoplight for, which is a lot of the comments we're hearing. They no longer evaluate impacts from that level. They're evaluating it from how many vehicle miles do you have to travel to get to your next destination? And from that aspect, this project actually has a very low impact, being that you have your school, your library, your office, your shopping center, everything within a very short distance. So that's a very small impact, or no impact, I should say, from the CEQA perspective. Regarding school capacities, unfortunately, I can't speak too much on it since the school district does handle school capacities and school enrollment. What I can add is that this project was coordinated and routed with the Fairfield Sassoon School District, and we received no negative comments or no formal comments stating that the schools would be impacted by this project. Additionally, what I can add is, should the project be approved, there are development impact fees that the applicant would have to pay that go towards the school to fund anything the school would like to do, expansions, salaries, etc. From a parking concern just for the project site itself, our code does only require 1 space per unit. And so at the proposal, the project currently is with 101 spaces. It is technically overparked. So from a code perspective, it meets our parking requirements. And then additionally, as we noted earlier, the Green Valley Office Park has CC&Rs that allow cross-access for parking and just vehicle access. So should the parking have to overflow beyond the Aurora site, they actually are permitted to park in the other parcels within the office park. Sorry, I know there's a lot of items here. From a school safety perspective, our police captain of community services, Brad Collins, was going to be here tonight, but unfortunately an emergency did arise and that needed his attention. So I do have just kind of a short snippet email from him regarding the comments of school safety and active shooters. So I just want to read that to the group. Again, I apologize, I can't necessarily elaborate further on it since I'm not in the police department, but this was the police department's comment on the matter. The current open field as it currently exists, so if there is no development, already allows any person to walk up to the school fence line. It's a horrible thing to think about, but as it stands right now, there are potentials for that type of safety impact. The addition of this development would not enhance that potential impact or safety concern. Additionally, Cordelia Hills Elementary is an example where housing overlooks a schoolyard. There are 2-story homes at a higher grade, so there actually is an example right now where you have residential overlooking a schoolyard. But our police department does state that they would recommend the developer to plant large trees and additional walls and fences to add extra barriers at that interface. Then going to kind of the big topic of traffic, I'm going to ask that some city staff experts come. I'm sorry, pause for a moment here.
And before we bring up the traffic, a few other items I want to clarify when you're done.
Traffic is my next item, so if you want to add your clarifications, please.
Sure. Just a few items. First of all, SB 330, we gave you a presentation at the beginning. There were some comments about what the state's intent is with SB 330. I can say a couple of things to that regard. First, there are 14 different statements of intent. 2 of those 14 pertain to the fires. So yes, they do talk about the fires, but they are only a portion of the intent of the state regarding that law. There are large sections of SB 330 that pertain to affordable projects specifically. We didn't talk about that tonight because this is not a designated affordable project. It's a market rate project. We highlighted the sections of the law that are in place, regardless of how one might interpret what the legislature's intent was. We highlighted the sections of the law that do apply to this project as a market rate project. So while we can, you can interpret what the state intended, again, only 2 of the 14 items pertain to the fire. But one way or the other, the law that we quoted for you tonight is the law that pertains to this project that you do need to consider as you review this. Building on Maley's comments upon traffic and the vehicle miles traveled aspect of the environmental review, the state actually precludes us from using level of service, from evaluating the conditions of the intersection as a part of the environmental analysis. And so that's why City of Fairfield, as well as most other cities, have moved to a vehicle miles traveled standard, looking at how many miles are we typically seeing from the project in front of you. So I just want you to remember, we've talked to you about this in the past, just a reminder that the reason we're using that VMT analysis is because the state literally has told us we cannot use LOS as a part of that CEQA analysis. And then just one final thing to clarify, our general plan, and Maley touched on this, there was a comment about an inactive general plan. Our existing general plan is not inactive until the new general plan is adopted. The existing general plan that's been in place since 2002 is active. So that is what we do use. So with that.
Just before we go to the traffic, can you speak to the issue of penalty, which came up a couple of times? If this were found to be in violation of the state bill, what exposure might the city have?
Sure, I can speak to that. So if, because this falls under SB 330, if this were found to be in violation of the Housing Accountability Act, if a lawsuit were to ensue, the city would be subject to paying the applicant's attorney's fees if they prevailed in that lawsuit. And more importantly, a court would likely compel the city to approve the project as it was originally proposed, and the city would not be able to impose any conditions upon it.
Okay, for the traffic component, based on my notes, this is the summary of items that I had heard, that the traffic studies data collection did not have the right hours. It didn't include the coffee shop component, and also just concerns over signal timing and the length at certain intersections. And for that, we have Tina Tran and Hannah Lay from our traffic division.
Hi, good evening, Commissioners. My name is Tina Tran, Transportation Planner with the city's Traffic Engineering Section. I heard a lot of comments about traffic today, so I just want to speak on the data that was submitted to the city and in no means invalidate anyone else's experiences or observations. The consultant Fair and Peers conducted a full transportation impact analysis that includes, again, VMT, LOS, also talks about access and circulation. So I wanted to talk very briefly about VMT. As I'm sure you're all very aware, VMT focuses on impacts on the environment. And so we only look at vehicles miles traveled and the environmental impacts. However, the city has also addressed LOS concerns. So the analysis also looks at level of service to be consistent with the city general plan, as well as the city's guidelines for transportation impact analysis. So for vehicles miles traveled, with this project and the its location, its proximity to public transportation and amenities, Fair and Peers has assessed that the project creates a VMT of 41.6 vehicles miles traveled per dwelling unit, which is below the city's threshold of 44 VMT per unit. So in that case, it does not create a significant impact. It creates a less than significant impact. For our level of service, I wanted to just quickly walk through the different scenarios that were assessed. I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm staring right at you. I think because your name is Tina as well. But the different scenarios were existing with no project, existing with project, existing with approved projects in the area, and then existing with approved projects plus a project. So just very quickly, I wanted to turn to table, I believe it was table 7. I'm not sure if everyone has access to that right now. But the traffic analysis assessed 6 studies intersections. So it looked at the project intersection, which is Wiseman and Healthcare, and then right down Healthcare and Business Center Drive and Green Valley Road, and then Knightsville Road and Business Center Drive, and then the 2 I-80 eastbound and westbound ramps. And just to quickly state, there are 2 major triggers for level of service. And that would be for, especially in this project, arterial roadways must operate at level of service D or better. And if a project comes in and degrades that intersection or study intersections to less than LOSD, then it will create a significant impact. And then the second trigger is if an intersection is already operating at LOS E or F, and a project comes in and creates a delay of 5 or more seconds, then it will create a significant impact. So I just wanted to state that. The Fair and Peers study concluded that in the existing conditions, all study intersections operate at acceptable levels. And, yes, table 7, it was on page 32 if anyone wants to see that. It shows existing LOS, and it also compares it to the existing plus the project. So existing LOS, as well as existing plus project, the intersections all operate acceptably. And I just wanted to note that because the intersection of Green Valley and Business Center Drive is one of concern for the residents, the project does add 2 seconds of delay. So that's less than 5 seconds, which does not trigger a significant impact. I also wanted to point out table 9 on page 39 states that the existing plus approved projects versus existing plus approved plus project. I'm sorry, that's a lot of words. But basically, the assessment looked at all the approved projects in the area, and then also assessed it with that layer and added the proposed project. As you can see, all the intersections operate at acceptable levels, so anything greater than LOSD, except for Green Valley Road at Business Center Drive, which operates at LOSE with approved projects in the area. And when they then added the Aurora project, the level of service for Green Valley Road and Business Center Drive is still LOSE, but it does increase the delay by 2 seconds, which again is still not 5 seconds or more, and it does not trigger a significant impact. I forgot one thing. I remember someone mentioned a discrepancy of time periods in the data collection. However, I wanted to note that typically data collection occurs throughout the entire day over multiple days. And then that peak hour, which is noted, I believe it was 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. and 4 to 6 p.m. That's the peak hour that is identified with the data collected. So that just shows the highest number of volumes and trips. Yeah, from that standpoint, from the VMT and the LOS standpoints, the project does not trigger any thresholds. I have our traffic operations engineer, Hannah Lay, here to talk about any specific traffic operations questions. And I know Brian Just from Fire is also here to talk about emergency access. But that's all I have. Thank you. Okay.
Good evening, commissioners, and good evening, members of the public. My name is Hannah Lay. I work as the Associate Civil Engineer for the Traffic Division. I work primarily in traffic operations, so signal timings are typically designed and run through me. For context, since I know a lot of people have a lot of questions and have concerns about the Green Valley and Business Center Drive intersection. Currently, that intersection is being run by a adaptive program, so it's an AI software that takes into account all of the demand that's going through the intersection in real time and makes adjustments as the days go. Some of the things that I know, I lived right by Nelda Mundy for about 25 years, so I know the intersection pretty well as well. Some of the things that you may have noticed when the adaptive signal went into commission is things like, instead of letting all the lefts through first and then the throughs, you'll see that the throughs go through first and then the lefts. That's all predetermined by the AI software to make the best decisions possible. Now, if you really are experiencing something as serious as an 8-minute delay at the intersection, so that doesn't count the time from your home to the intersection, it's at the intersection. If you are experiencing that much delay, you can contact the city. That is not an acceptable rate. This intersection monitors all of the timings that happen throughout the day and the delays that are occurring. So if you tell me the time and the date and when it occurred, I can pull up exactly how long that phase was waiting. So if you are experiencing that, please let us know. It means that the software is not working as intended. So things like that, you can contact the city and we will look into it. If there's any other questions about signal operations from the commissioners, I'm glad to take.
Okay, I'm sorry, this is a pet peeve of mine. Living and working and going through that intersection multiple times. Who am I to question AI? But it doesn't work for me.
Right.
I just feel like we should be able to go through 2 lights without being stopped, except on rare occasions. It's frequently you get stopped at one or the other.
Mm-hmm. So just to give you a little more context, I know historically Knightsville Road and Business Center Drive is, I think it's about 100 feet away east of Green Valley and Business Center. That road is currently designed as a temporary road. So that signal that is there shall not be there so long as the I-80, 680, 12 interchange project that is being run by Caltrans continues throughout their phasing. Currently, I believe they've completed the Highway 12 portion. There's more phases to that project, and one of them includes the removal of Knightsville Road. Keeping that in mind, as of right now, the highest demand at Business Center and Green Valley Road is the left turning movement coming from Knightsville Road going towards the 80. So that's the westbound movement. And that is what our AI software is designating as the priority, and it gives the most time to, because there is the most demand. The adverse effects of that is people going north or southbound, right, coming from Mangles or other, you will experience a little more delay than what you would like, but for the best operations of that intersection, you are experiencing the best possible delay. I am sorry.
So just to be clear, Knightsville Road will eventually only be westbound access to 80.
Knightsville Road should actually just be removed entirely, from my understanding.
Well, I thought it was going to become westbound access.
In conjunction with an on-ramp onto 80 over by Sassoon Valley.
Okay,
So
but
you
that
know-
whole bend and curve, that's what you're saying will disappear.
So, when you're going westbound 80 coming from, let's say, downtown Fairfield, and you're getting off at Green Valley Road, since I'm speaking to everybody who knows, the exit, when you get off, when you have 2 options. You can go straight or you can go right. The right portion will remain as an exit for the 80. However, that straight portion is the portion that will be removed as part of the 680 I-80 12 interchange project. The timing of that is not determined by the city. It is determined by Caltrans. However, the city is working in coordination with the county and Caltrans to best address how those phasings and how those timings should go so that we can address the concerns of the residents. We're a small pie in the big piece of the puzzle, so.
Okay. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Any
I-
other comments from city staff?
I think we've covered what we'll cover.
Okay. We'll now turn the time over to deliberation with the commissioners.
Can I have a question from the staff, please? Before we do the deliberations. Okay, it's kind of a legal question for me. And the Senate Bill 330 was signed by Governor Newsom on October 9, 2019. And then it says the primary purpose of SB 330 is to suspend certain restrictions on new housing development. And I went through the whole staff report. I didn't find any what restrictions we are suspending in the present case, if there's any. That's question one. And the second, in the use permit, conditional use permit, there are conditions, and the number 6 condition is the proposed use, the proposed use will not create either an imbalance or overabundance of similar uses in the vicinity. So I don't know how many more similar projects are in the vicinity, but I see there's one project of apartments, Nova Apartments was there, and another came up for hearing before us, I think last month, and that was 172 apartments. Those are almost within the radius of half a mile or 3/4 of a mile. So when we say in the vicinity, what's the distance we consider that this particular apartment development is not within the vicinity or proximity of those two buildings, apartments which are already there?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Paul, is your question, are you talking about traffic?
No.
Or what?
It doesn't say traffic.
I think I understand. At least for your second question, the use permit has a finding that you have to meet, that there's not an overabundance or an imbalance of apartments. And you're mentioning several apartments have been built in the Green Valley, Cordelia vicinity. So how do we measure that?
Yeah,
Is
that
that
was my
correct?
question, yes.
Yeah. So for that, when you look at Cordelia, Green Valley area, yes, we have introduced several new apartments in the recent years, but if you look at the big picture, the grand scheme, the majority of the housing makeup is still single-family detached housing. So when we're looking at essentially the ratio of units, the amount of apartment complex or the amount of apartment complex units is still a fairly low percentage of the quantity of housing out in that particular area. And then for your first question, I think I heard you asking, SB 330 identifies a suspension of development. Is that correct? And you're wondering, how does this project relate to that? Is that accurate?
No, actually, that was the primary purpose of SB 330 is to suspend certain restrictions. So what restrictions we are suspending or compromising in this particular case?
Correct. Okay, gotcha. So SB 330 does have essentially restrictions on the city in terms of how we evaluate projects that qualify for it. And those restrictions are the objective and non-objective standards or subjective standards. So at the beginning of the presentation, when I identified if a project is, for this example, mixed use, where at least 2/3 of it is residential, it qualifies for SB 330. And if the project is consistent with our general plan and zoning, then we, the city, if you will, are restricted in how we act on the application. You cannot deny the project or reduce the amount of density of the project unless you can meet very specific safety findings. So that is what SB 330 is restricting. It's restricting the review body, the Planning Commission in this instance, ability to deny a project unless it can make those very specific findings.
Thank you, Mandy.
Other thoughts and questions and comments?
I would like to just thank everyone, as you did earlier, who's participated in coming out and being engaged. Cordelia has remained steadfast in coming out for every single project and giving their opinion, whether it's pro or con, and I appreciate that. I think the bigger takeaway tonight is that when it comes to civic engagement, whether you're for or against, whatever the Senate law was created for initially, the use for it now is to essentially eliminate the not in my backyard type of attitude, because the state is in a housing crisis like most of the nation is. And for me, this project is not the hill that I would die on in regards to having it go all the way up to court because we want to challenge it. I actually think that this project is good for the area because it's really, that particular area, I've been out there many times. I've brought people to the library for meetings because it's gorgeous and it's very, very walkable. So my hope is that the Aurora Apartments, or I'm not sure if it's going to be called the Aurora Apartments, but my hope is that the Aurora project will support local businesses and the people that move there will do more walking as it is intended. I absolutely do not like the idea of this being called a mixed-use project with a coffee shop that's small or with a business that's small. It really gives that it's performative, and it really gives the feeling that it's more of a private coffee shop that was intended for the residents there versus the public. So the way that it looks, I think, is further inflaming the situation, and it's not really, I don't think that it is really conducive to being mixed use. But moving forward, as it was said earlier, that is something that we can discuss here as a planning commission. Moving forward, what do we want our mixed use projects to look like? Because I would have loved to have seen a little bit more of mixed use. I understand that that would bring more traffic. However, to have more seating in a coffee shop, I think that would have been great for the area, because right now it just seems like it's more of a private use coffee shop that a few people can use who don't live there. But for me, I don't think that this is the project that we want to have challenged in a court of law, because I just don't think that it's going to be that impactful in the community. I actually think that with putting that clubhouse in front of the school and building a gate, I do like that idea, because I've never liked the idea of when I walk over there, there's an open field and you can look directly at the playground. So I'm actually kind of thankful that that's going to be a little more shielded, and hopefully when the two adjacent buildings go up, that, the view will be totally blocked. So sorry, that was a little long, but that's my soapbox for the evening.
Thank you. Other thoughts, comments?
I concur with the point about the public comments and the participation for our city. It is absolutely refreshing, and so I appreciate that. And I do want to get the staff, if Dave could comment about the mixed use. Is the coffee shop the secondary, but the mixed use is applicable because of the other office buildings? The reason why we can call this a mixed use project? Or is it strictly because of that additional coffee shop? I think that's important to understand that context as well, because we don't want it presented as something that's not being transparent. So I just want to understand more of that definition, if you will. Thank you.
Was that I'm sure that's a question you'd like me to address?
If the staff can answer that.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So there are actually two separate references to mixed use, and I don't have the language specifically in front of me, but I can give you the gist of it. There are two areas in our mixed use commercial section that talk about what it means to be mixed use. And one is that you have a mixture of commercial and non-commercial uses on the same site. And then there's a separate discussion of it being on the same property. And so if you want to talk about the spirit of the intent of that regulation, the spirit is where it talks about it on the same site. And that's where Maley highlighted that whole complex that has common shared roads, shared parking. You have multiple office buildings, the library, you've got the building that has sticky rice in it. In terms of being one site, all of that functions as one site. And so part of the definition in our code where it says the mixed use has to be a mixture on the site, it doesn't have any particular standard at all as to how much of one or the other use makes it mixed use. It's silent on that topic. But the one part says site. The other part, and where this particular property gets caught up, is the code also says that the mixed use has to be on the same property. And each of those buildings sits on a different legal parcel, even though they all function as one site. And so that's where the Wiseman Group had to introduce onto this particular property some amount of commercial in order to be able to say it meets the letter of what the code says. And again, the code doesn't have a specific threshold, and that's, if the commission wants to talk about that at a future date, should that section have a threshold of some sort, we can certainly come back with that discussion. But for the moment, it has it on that parcel specifically because there's a section of that mixed use component of our zoning code that says it has to be on the same parcel.
Yeah, just to put a
Thank you.
nail on that, it doesn't pass the smell test. I don't know anybody here that would say that's a mixed-use project, but it does pass the strict interpretation of the city ordinance as it stands today. I think it's our collective responsibilities to bring some greater clarity to that in the future, but that's not a question for tonight.
No, I wanted, I respect your opinion, but I wanted to hear clarification from from staff and so publicly that we can all collectively understand that definition.
Thank you.
Thank you. First and foremost, thank you, the public. This is a highly charged thing, emotionally charged for many of the parents and residents here. And you were extremely professional, you were extremely kind, and that is greatly appreciated by us. Following forward, though, I genuinely believe that this is the direction that we need to try to go. I do believe this is addressing the live-work concept that we're trying to impose in our community. And it's a small step, but it is a good step. The traffic is undeniable, and it is something that needs to be addressed. But I don't believe that these 72 units are going to make an impact one way or the other. To disagree with my esteemed colleague over here, it does pass the smell test. I love coffee. And Journey Coffee, actually, when you said that's exciting to me. I think they're a great community member. I think that individuals in the community are going to enjoy having it there. I have one small hope, and that is that it is so successful that they have to force themselves to expand that area. I do want to reiterate, I am, and that's for another time, but I don't think that a heavy wood fence meets the test for a school. And from multiple points, including sound, I hope that when this comes back, that we have the opportunity to review that a little bit more. With that, I thank you all for this evening. It was actually a pleasure, and I wasn't looking forward to it, to be honest.
Yeah, to me it looks a great project, but I want to add and ask Adams one thing. And the future is coming for all electric vehicles or hydrogen powered vehicles. So are we putting any EV charging station there? So anybody renting an apartment or buying an apartment, they will have at least EV vehicle or there. And I don't see in any of these project reports, well, there will be any EV charging stations. If I live there, definitely I need a EV station there. So I can't go elsewhere when I'm living there. I definitely want the EV stations there. Thank you.
Yeah, just as a point, we need to either communicate with staff or ourselves at this point in time. But to that point, building code requirement is now what? Do you want to clarify that? I want to say it's 10%, but I could stand corrected.
To be honest, I'm so sorry. I do not know the percentage, but I think we're on the same wavelength that California Building Code does require that projects are EV ready, essentially. So all the infrastructure, everything has to be there, and it's constantly updating. I'm sure at some future date, it's going to require that everything is in place at a certain percentage or at a certain parking stall count. And I'm sure the applicant team has engineers or experts that can talk to that a little more. I don't know if we have to open public hearing.
It's not. So do we need to reopen?
If you wish to have somebody come back up to speak, you would need to reopen the public hearing.
Do we want that? Okay, I think we understand that it will be as per code. Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments? If not, would someone like to make a motion relative to the resolution?
I make a motion that the commission approves resolution number PC 2023-12 with the, it wasn't amendments, but with the use permit as is stated from staff recommendations.
Just as clarification, the use permit is part of the resolution, correct?
Yes, the use permit is part of the resolution. I would ask, though, that in whomever's motion, you make a determination on the common open space reduction, whether or not you want to permit it or not. The conditions are written so that it can go either way.
And including that to approve the reduction of the open space from 150 to 136.11, if my memory serves me correct.
And is there a second?
I do the second.
Okay, let's see, do we just call for a vote or do we need a roll call?
No, you can just call for a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Okay, those of you that want to stay for the next session, next item, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll just take a moment and then move forward with the agenda. Do we want to take a comfort break or are we good? Yes? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute break. I have an open mind. The meeting is now back in order, and we turn to staff Jesse Hernandez for item B. Thank you.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. My name is Jesse Hernandez, and tonight I'll be presenting a summary of the land use alternatives phase of the general plan update and the City Council's vision for growth. The existing general plan was last updated in 2002, and this general plan update launched in December 2020. The project, called Fairfield Forward 2050, will set the vision and goals for growth in Fairfield for the next 25-plus years. There has been ongoing public engagement from January 2021 to the present. Public engagement is critical to identifying and understanding community concerns and developing a community-based vision and shared goals. The project team has engaged a broad cross-section of stakeholders by conducting a range of activities and providing multiple opportunities to participate in English and Spanish. Engagement activities have included stakeholder interviews and meetings, workshops, online surveys, pop-ups at community events, general plan advisory committee meetings, and study sessions. The project recently completed the land use alternatives phase. In fall 2021, staff and project consultants developed 3 land use alternatives based on community input and the previously adopted vision and guiding principles. The purpose of the alternatives was to provide alternate land use patterns that implement the city's long-term vision for future growth and development at the 10,000-foot level. Each alternative included concepts that could be mixed and matched to create a preferred land use plan. The preferred land use plan could also contain ideas not shown in any of the 3 prepared alternatives. Public, Planning Commission, and City Council input was solicited between October 2021 and September 2023 through a series of public engagement activities. During the 7 study sessions, the Council provided direction on which aspects of the alternatives they supported for the general plan update. The Council also identified areas where they supported additional or new concepts for the general plan update. The following direction represents the City Council's vision for future growth and development at the 10,000-foot level. Staff will return in a subsequent phase with recommendations for specific facilities, amenities, and circulation improvements to achieve the City Council's vision, including new schools, parks, and roadway improvements. With regards to the heart of Fairfield or downtown area, the City Council would like to facilitate higher density housing south of the specific plan area and mixed-use development near the Fairfield Transportation Center on Cadanasso Drive. The City Council would like to see major transformation of the Solano Town Center Mall and new land uses, including high-density housing, mixed uses, and multimodal transportation. Major transformation is also envisioned for the North Texas corridor by incorporating mixed uses and implementing public realm improvements. The City Council would like to see a higher-end lifestyle center at the vacant Garaventa site. That's pictured on the top right of this regional map. With a mix of retail, recreational, mixed use, and higher density residential land uses. The City Council would like to annex and permit low-density housing and open space at the unincorporated Dittmer and Mangles properties on the left hand of this map. Along the Business Center Drive corridor, the council envisions a mix of employment uses and housing on a case-by-case basis. That would be a mix of employment uses as well as conditionally permitting housing. Industrial zoning districts would be tailored to facilitate specific desired uses while prohibiting undesired uses. The City Council would explicitly like to prohibit warehousing and distribution along Business Center Drive. Grocery stores were a driving factor for land use decisions in the Cordelia area. Economic development experts, BAE, analyzed Cordelia area demand for new grocery stores as part of the general plan update. BAE found that pipeline projects will create sufficient demand for a new small grocery store like Sprouts in the Cordelia area long term. Although there will be sufficient demand, this does not guarantee that a grocery store will locate to the Cordelia area. An additional 2,100 units beyond those currently planned would be required to attract a new full-size store like Safeway or Raley's. The Cordelia area is likely to attract only one additional grocery store. Because the two existing grocery stores, and as a side note, our economic consultants do view Costco as a grocery store because it fulfills that need. So because the two existing grocery stores are located in the Cordelia area north of I-80, staff and experts recommend facilitating a grocery store south of I-80. This is also where 55% of the Cordelia area population lives, and this population must currently cross over freeways to access grocery store services. The City Council was comfortable with a new small grocery store south of I-80 and did not support planning for an additional 2,100 units. South of I-80, the City Council, as I mentioned, would like to facilitate a new grocery store at the commercially zoned vacant site along Red Top Road. The council also directed staff to downzone the neighboring high-density residential site pictured here along Red Top Road. Nelson Hill will be kept as a study area. The council would like to evaluate access, infrastructure, and wildfire safety concerns. And in unincorporated Suisun Valley, the Hill Ranch property, pictured here, south of I-80, will be designated as a study area to evaluate the potential future role of the city, specifically in this study area. The general plan update will also include general policy language directing the city to collaborate with Solano County and Suisun Valley stakeholders and to support the vision of the Suisun Valley Strategic Plan. With regards to next steps for the general plan update, staff are currently revising the project schedule to reflect the extended land use alternatives phase. The revised schedule will be provided to the Planning Commission when it is ready. Staff will present a proposed preferred land use plan to the council in December 2023. This preferred land use plan will provide a land use map that communicates the community's vision for future growth and development. Again, subsequent phases will identify specific facilities and improvements needed to achieve this vision, such as locations for new schools, parks, and roadway improvements. Following the council's approval of the preferred plan, staff will begin developing policies and updating general plan element chapters called elements. Thank you, and staff are happy to take any questions.
And if I can add one item before we take any questions, or maybe a couple of items to that, and thank you, Jesse. Planning Commission last heard about these alternatives in fall of 2021. You reviewed them, provided your input. We had expected to have moved a little faster than we have. The council wanted to slow the item down, directed staff to engage directly with stakeholders, particularly in the Cordelia and Sassoon Valley area. There was engagement, that direct engagement with reporting back and getting additional feedback from the city council. So while a lot was going on behind the scenes and the Planning Commission wasn't particularly involved in that, now that we are ready to move on to the next steps, we'll be back in front of the Planning Commission presenting to you proposals and concepts, particularly as we start to move into the policy development section. And a lot of what we've been talking about tonight gets to policies, directions for how we should grow and develop. Even if the city, if the council has said we want to see certain things along Business Center Drive, there's a lot more fleshing out of how that'll look, and that's where we'll come back in front of the Planning Commission to get your input on those kinds of things. We don't yet have a schedule beyond just reporting back in December to the council with essentially the summary. Jesse's giving you a broad summary. There'll be a summary document that'll go in front of the city council in December that summarizes pretty much everything. We'll share that with you as well. But as we move from there into the next steps of developing the policies, we're putting together a schedule for how that's going to look over the coming year. And at probably your next meeting or maybe the meeting after, we'll share with you what the schedule is so that you can get a sense of when will the Planning Commission be further engaged on this. So with that, any questions?
Thank you, Jesse. Any questions for staff?
Just really quick, the Heart of Fairfield, the mixed use mentioned earlier, do they already have policies in regards to what mixed use looks like? Any specifications in the Heart of Fairfield plan? Or would we be addressing that at a later date?
In the existing general plan or the
Heart of
update?
Fairfield plan?
In the Heart of Fairfield plan, I'm not, off the top of my head, I don't know if it defines mixed use. As it came up in Aurora, mixed use is broadly defined in the zoning ordinance, although as we've seen, doesn't go into the details such as specific thresholds.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, and particularly in the area around the Fairfield Transportation Center over in the west end of the Heart of Fairfield. The Heart of Fairfield plan, actually, we've got a major transportation facility, is actually pretty silent on introducing, there's a lot of commercial development around there. You've got the Winery Square shopping center, you've got there's the little center that has McDonald's and a couple of other commercial buildings, and then you've got Target and Home Depot. So it's almost entirely right now non-residential, and yet you've got a major commuting resource smack in the middle of that. And so the plan is, if there was probably one area where the plan was probably a little deficient in moving forward all the other concepts in the Heart of Fairfield plan, it's the area around the transportation center. So it's kind of silent on mixed use in that area. So that's something we will come back. And whether or not the Planning Commission wants to make recommendations that are unique and specific to that area in terms of mixed use, or if you want to wrap it into a larger discussion of what does mixed use look like, we can certainly do that. And although we didn't get specific direction from the Planning Commission, staff certainly heard loud and clear in our last item concern about the smell test of what mixed use is, and so we'll be coming back to you either towards the end of this year or the early next year with outside of the general plan concept, looking at our current zoning ordinance and whether or not we should be making some changes to that. And we'll get your feedback, and then we'll come back to you with some language that incorporates your feedback.
Any other questions?
Just more of a comment that I know other areas have done this, like in parts of Sacramento where they have apartments and all within walking areas of restaurants and stores. So I think it would be helpful if there's other cities or neighboring cities that have been successful in this area to have those as examples of what made it successful. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, no, we agree. And one of the things that we're going to be looking at is how do you do what we call placemaking? How do you take, it's one thing to plop a particular use here, a particular use here, a particular use here, all around parking lots. Does that create the kind of place that that is attractive for, that's going to pull people and that will make people want to stay and shop and feel like you're somewhere? And so we're hoping through the general plan discussions as we move into the policies that we can find ways, looking at good examples in other areas nearby where you actually do see that placemaking. How do we incorporate that into the policies of the general plan?
Thank you.
Dave, when we were at the Planning Commissioners training,
yep.
Mr. Taggy made a comment that mixed use doesn't work. I didn't know what he meant by that, and then afterwards I asked him and he said, well, it's not profitable. Can you speak to that? I mean, why I think that mixed use does work, and I couldn't understand why he felt that it was not a good plan going forward.
Yeah, I'm not an economist in sufficient levels to know exactly what he was thinking. I think it is it's probably not wise to make a single blanket statement, a one-size-fits-all, mixed use doesn't work. But we've got examples of mixed use all over the place where it does work. And the question is, will it work in Fairfield? I can't answer that today. The general plan looks out over a long-term horizon. What we want to do is put in place policies that create the best kind of place we can be, and then work to address how do we make those things pencil.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you again, Jesse, and we look forward to more discussions on that.
And one final thing, if I may, Mr. Chair. The last time we really engaged with you on this, Amy Kreimeier was the staff person. I know some of you were not on the Planning Commission, but others of you were. Amy is no longer with the city. We hired Jesse as her replacement, and so Jesse will be the face of the general plan that you'll see as we move forward over the coming year.
Thank you.
We're now ready for the director's report.
Yeah, busy meeting tonight. Not a whole lot to report. I'll have some more substantive things at your next meeting. We are not anticipating a first meeting in October on the second Wednesday, whatever date that is. You're gonna close tonight's meeting to that, just in case, but we do have at least one item that we know is tracking for the second meeting in October, a new Starbucks here in the city. So you should have at least one meeting in October, and at that point, I've got some of the things I'll be able to share with you at that point, as well as hopefully a schedule for the general plan over the coming year.
And as you already mentioned, at some future date, let's revisit how we define mixed use.
Yes.
So,
like I said, within the next, we're looking at our staff capacity. We've got several staff members who are out on leave right now, but around December or January, we'll definitely come back with a study session for you to discuss mixed use, get your feelings, get your input. What does it look like? What does it mean to you? What are our regulations? We'll actually walk through that and let you give your input about any changes you might want to see.
Thank you. Commissioners, any final items?
There is something that I wanted to bring up because at our last session, we had a presentation by the Transportation Commission, or Transportation Fairfield FAST. And we had asked for FAST to come on and give a presentation months ago, but due to scheduling, it took a while. And I know some folks on the commission still had questions, but we were cut off. So I'm just asking that in the future, if we can get maybe a last question warning before we move forward, so we can then wrap it up instead of, just kind of abruptly ending.
Okay. Duly noted. Any other comments?
Just a quick comment. I thoroughly appreciate the team that put together the Solano County Planning Commissioners Training. It was very enjoyable, and I recommend that that would be an annual event.
Very good. If there are no other comments, we are adjourned to our next meeting on October 11th, 2023.